Our host for today is the treasurer of Sumisho Motor Finance Corporation. Let us all welcome Miss Jane Lorraine Lim.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 7th FINEX General Membership Meeting with the team Harnessing Big Data and AI, Transitioning from Conglomerate to Techglomerate. This GMM is presented by the Programs and Meetings Committee. To formally open the program, may I call on our Vice President, Mr. Joey Gomez, to call the meeting to order.
On behalf of FINEX President Toti Bengson, who couldn't make it to today's GMM, I call this meeting to order.
Thank you, Joey. Now, may I request everyone to join us in prayer, to be followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Dear God, thank you for allowing us to meet at today's event. May you extend your divine wisdom to our speakers so they may be able to impart their knowledge and expertise. Bless all the participants that they will obtain vital information from this event, that they will go out and share what they had learned. In the spirit of your love and generosity, may this activity glorify your name alone. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ilagay po natin ang ating kanang kamay sa ating kaliwang dibdib at sabay-sabay po nating awitin ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw. May dilag ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng luwalhati at sinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
May I call on again Vice President Joey for an announcement?
Yes, for the information of the members, FINEX President Toti's message and report will be published in the FINEX Focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Now, before we go further with our program today, we would like to remind everyone to keep their participation and engagement with FINEX active, not just by attending events, but also sharing your photos on social media and tag FINEX social media accounts, such as Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We'd love to see your photos, although for now, a screenshot of you attending today's virtual event will do. Don't forget to use official hashtags for today's event. Hashtag PhoenixFeels, hashtag Phoenix7GMM. We look forward to your posts. At this part of our program, let us all meet the new members that will be inducted today. May I call on the chairman of the membership committee, Mr. Domingo Sigo, to introduce the new members.
Good afternoon. It is my privilege to introduce the following new members who will be inducted this afternoon. Ms. Michelle D. Chan, Treasurer, Senior Manager, Finance, Advanced Food Concepts Manufacturing, Inc., sponsored by Cristina De Leon. Ms. Jesseline Canoy, Senior Vice President, Marsh Philippines, Inc., sponsored by Ms. Hilaria Concepcion. Mr. Richard Chong-Soo Woo-Shin, Chief Financial Officer and Chief Risk Officer of Jollibee Foods Corporation, sponsored by Mr. Wilson P. Tan. and Ms. Abigail D. Tan, President of R Capital SME Finance Inc., sponsored by Mr. John Balse. To add solemnity to the occasion, may I request the inductees to open your cameras and microphones, and may I call on our Executive Vice President, Mr. Jose Luis Gomez, to administer the oath of membership. Thank you.
Oath of membership. I state your name.
I, Abigail Tan,
Having been accepted as a member of the Financial Executive Institute of the Philippines,
having been accepted as a member of the
Financial-
Financial
Executives Institute of the Philippines.
do hereby solemnly swear
do
Do
hereby
hereby
solemnly
solemnly
swear
that I will faithfully discharge
Swear
I
that
will
I will
faithfully
faithfully discharge
to the best of my ability
to the
to
best
the
of
best of my abilities,
my duties and responsibilities
my duties and responsibilities
in the pursuit of its goals and objectives.
in the
in the
pursuit of its
pursuit
goals
of
and
its goals and
objectives.
objectives,
That I will protect and uphold its constitution and bylaws.
That
I
I
will protect and uphold
its
its
Constitution and bylaws.
bylaws,
That I will abide by its code of ethics.
That I will
I will
abide
abide by its code of ethics,
That I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards.
that
That I will observe
I will
the
observe the highest
professional,
and
moral and
moral,
ethical
and ethical standards.
And that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself
that I
And that I
voluntarily impose
this obligation upon myself
myself
without mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without mental
without
reservation.
mental reservation or
reservation.
So help me God.
So
so
help me
help
God.
me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Go and Joey, and welcome to our new members. We look forward to working with you in and out of FINEX. Now, moving on, I know we are all excited to dive right into the discussion of today's GMM team. Let me do the honor on introducing our guest speaker for today. He is the CEO of Aboitiz Data Innovation and Senior Advisor for Data and AI of Union Bank Philippines, Mr. David Hardun. Prior to his current roles, David was a Monetary Authority of Singapore first appointed Chief Data Officer and Head of Data Analytics, Group reporting to the agency Deputy Managing Director for Financial Supervision, and subsequently Special Advisor for Artificial Intelligence, reporting to Deputy Managing Director for Markets and Development. In these roles, he led the development of the AI strategy, both for MAS and Singapore's financial sector, as well as driving efforts in promoting open cross-border data flows. David pioneered the regulator and central bank adoption of data science, as well as establishment of the fairness, ethics, accountability, and transparency principles. First-of-a-kind guidelines for adopting artificial intelligence in the financial industry, as well as establishing the MAS-backed Veritas Consortium. David was also an external advisor to Singapore's Corrupt Investigation Practices Bureau in the capacity of Senior Advisor, Artificial Intelligence, and External Advisor, Singapore's Central Provident Fund Board in the capacity of Senior Advisor for Data Science. David has an extensive exposure and experience in both industry and academia. He has consistently applied advanced technology with an analytical mindset to shape and deliver new innovation. David holds a PhD in computer science in the field of machine learning from the University of Southampton and graduated from Royal Holloway University of London with first-class honors Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence. Out in the field, David is more likely to consider himself a data artist instead of a pure data scientist. Let us all welcome Mr. David Hardoon.
Thank you so very much for that very lovely and generous introduction. Let me concurrently do two things. I'm sharing my screen as well as talking, which is quite a difficult task, but I hope you can see my screen. Yes. Fantastic. I see some nods. So again, I want to just say thank you so very much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to everyone. I was looking forward to seeing all of you in person last week. However, safety does always come first, and I do indeed hope that everyone has and remains safe. So today, and in fact, I think I'll be spending a bit of time just going into a bit of details as for the title of what does it take to make AI work? And the reason I like to bring that up is because over the years, coming from a fairly academic background, fairly academic and fairly theoretical in its origin, to very focus on applied centric, is everyone's talking about AI. And even with the recent attention from a Gen AI perspective, LLMs and whatever other terminologies that you may be interested in, it's been around for a while. But the key question there is, how do you make it work? Pragmatically and practically. How does it get used? And in what manners does it get used within an organization? And I'll kind of be situating the conversation also along the lines of the thought process of this whole narrative of a tech conglomerate and the journey associated with that. But as I mentioned, take this as a bit of wetting the palate, as one says, and I'm looking forward to the discussion later and question and answer. And it could be on this topic or any other. I'm very happy to keep it quite fluid. So first things forward, I don't think I need to introduce the Avoidance group, but nonetheless, I did want to spend a couple of minutes to talk about, well, what is a tech conglomerate? I have actually also tried using just sort of curiosity, the various search GPTs out there. And unfortunately, it kind of just gave the response from our own marketing and PR team. So I could use that hack. But what is a tech conglomerate? Now, if you think about fundamentally, putting aside from the traditional conglomerate businesses, just look at the worlds of Facebook, Google, Amazon, whom I'm actually a particular fan of. In fact, even recently, even though it's not situated under the same official umbrella, but actually the world, if I use that term, that Elon Musk has kind of been creating with his various endeavors, from the more recent X, the Boring Company, I love that name, by the way, to SpaceX and so forth. If you think about it, the way these have been created, have been grown, is really a natural extension of the kind of home or originating company. Google, very much starting from search, but as it's been from the beginning, actually it's about data, resulting in advertising, resulting in other opportunities and server load management, etc., vision, mapping, etc., and so forth. But there has a natural and almost organic synergy across all of these underlying different entities in terms of how they communicate, how they operate, how they leverage on each other's data, and effectively building a business. Another one, perhaps slightly, I guess, in a way closer to home, if we look at North Asia, the world of ByteDance, the worlds of Tencent and so forth. Similar construct, starting with an original core and building out what effectively is a myriad of organizations that are, well, at times competing with one another, but where they are able to leverage, be it on leveraging on the same synergy of customers, whether it is in leverage in terms of data, where what is, one's man, quote unquote, garbage, maybe another man's treasure. It's happening and we're seeing it. And these new breed, new organizations, which technically not that new anymore, some of them at the 20 and 30 and 35 years of age, are getting a significant premium in the marketplace when they are traded. So the question comes when you're thinking about a conglomerate, whereby it may be from an inverse perspective of an acquisition of various organizations. And this is just an example of us from a voice group, and the power, the food, the bank, land. the other kind of infrastructure organization, and kind of us sitting in the core of it from a data-centric point of view. So the conglomerate is about, well, hold on a second, why can't we get that premium? There is a natural synergy, there is a natural opportunity, there's a natural potential that perhaps previously, due to an understandable operational nature of a company, this is what I do and this is what I need to achieve and these are my KPIs, may have been missed or not seen. As I mentioned earlier, one man's trust may be another one's treasure. How do you unlock that? That is, in a slightly long nutshell, really the underlying objective of what conglomerate means. And I don't believe that this is any different from many other organizations, whereby in a conglomerate level or even just a company, getting for those capabilities and synergies, even across different departments. Now, where this now becomes interesting, and I'll segue to the world, my world of data, is what is the natural aspects of synergy? Yes, there could be business ones from, in this case, financial offerings to, let's say, supply chain and all this. But what is that common denominator? Data. It is the ability of understanding of opportunities. It's the ability of leveraging. It's the ability to build on top, on the existing business lines or new ones. So that's the underlying conglomerate. And I promise you, this is the one and only shameless slide about ADI. I'm not a big fan of a marketing perspective, but still to give you a sense of, so what is us? What do we do? Okay, you get it that it's sitting at the heart from a conglomerate perspective in terms of maximizing opportunities of data. Well, very much fashioned on the structure of the group in terms of capabilities within the financial services arm, power and industrials, and public sector, incorporating domain expertise. And in fact, that is one most critical dimension in making AI work. I have been in, I would call it almost fantastic meetings throughout my career, when I would see data scientists, data people, digital folks presenting and talking about solutions and entirely missing the point, not because they've done anything wrong, not because what they're presenting is incorrect, but because there was a disconnect, a potential disconnect from a domain-centric point of view. So one way in getting one step closer and assuring that we're actually solving problems and solving the right problem is having that domain association. So just a bit of a sharing of how we as an organization are set up and how we think about in order of incubating and addressing problems. But like I said, just one shameless slide, just to give you the context about ADI. Now, to go broader about the conglomerate data, I feel that I have a bit of a no choice just to briefly touch on digital transformation. And I know some may go, oh, Christ, we have data, AI, conglomerate, now another transformation. It's kind of already becoming scary, but it's really important because in the end of the day, think about the operations of an organization. Is data heart of what you do, or is it a byproduct? Now, again, I'm not saying this from any ill intent point of view, but just calling out a fact. And many times when I was in the regulator, I would actually call out with financial institutions that actually the only reason they've even started collecting data is because they were forced to by the regulator. We want to know A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Oh, okay, let's collect this data so we can do those compliance and regulatory filings. Now, if you think about it similarly, less regulatory in nature to the nature of the operations of the business, do you collect data because you're actively looking for opportunities for process improvement, for new revenue lines, for operational efficiency, or are you collecting data because it's just a force of habit, because it's audit, because it's there because we were required to keep it for 7 years? A very important differentiator. And that's one of the essence and the goals of a digital transformation, is effectively just saying, we need to now think more from a strategic point of view as how do we leverage not just data, but digital assets from engagements, communications, channels. And it could be from a person. It could be obviously from a financial dimension, or in our case, where we have industrials, it could be a machine. A machine can also be digital to drive that ability of fit for future relevance, efficiency. When P&L, you obviously have the bottom line as well in terms of driving effectivity, and even an important dimension with respect of growing retaining and driving talent, which sometimes is a bit of a interesting, not paradox, with this ongoing conversation like, oh, digitalization, data, and AI is resulting in a potential competitive aspect towards people and jobs. On the contrary, it's all to drive a potentiality in the future. One of the difficulties, although, with digital transformation is we don't always know what's going to come. And I'll give you an example that I've actually a while now been using it, that I really, really like, especially when people ask me, well, David, how do we budget for it? What is our return on investment? How do we know what we're going to get back? And those are very important and relevant questions. Back to conglomerate, what is it we're going to get back? But the reality is, at the heart of it, at the starting point of it, is it's about knowledge. And can you put a price tag? Can you put a value tag on knowledge? The irony of the situation is kind of you only can do it slightly in delay when you have a better appreciating of that knowledge is. And let me give you that example I was talking about. Think about yourselves. When you went to school, where there was a local school, a polytechnic, a university, an internationally acclaimed institution, or when you send your kids, and it's going to cost you, I'm just going to throw a number here, whether it's 10,000 pesos or 1,000,000 pesos. Did you say, or did you go at any single point in time, oh, it's going to cost me this much, I expect this return. I expect you to give me back tenfold on the cost of the tuition. No, you said, we are investing in our future. We're investing in a career, we're investing in an opportunity, we're investing in the knowledge. So the reality at the heart of digital transformation and data is exactly the same thing. You are investing in knowledge. And as part of that element, and that's kind of why you're seeing at the center point of a learning dimension, whereby you're learning. And guess what? As you're learning, there's a portion of it that will go back to being comfort zone, resulting in those opportunities or changed potentiality. But the trick, and I literally mean it's a trick, and hence the importance of a data artist, maybe perhaps rather than data scientist, is how to do it so you don't shift people too far to the panic zone. And the panic zone is very real. If you walk into an organization saying like, oh, we're going to transform everything and we're going to change everything you do, most likely than not, you're going to result in, whether it's overtly expressed or not, is going to result in panic. So I just want to touch on this slightly, because I think this is a very important dimension in terms of thinking as part of an overall utilization and leverage of data. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side is just a breaking down of all of the underlying components that one does need to think about from the leveraging and resulting in that learning, actual learning, and driving it towards the comfort zone. Okay, I saw this video and you may think like, oh, David, this how is this relevant? Oh, wait. I realized I didn't do share sound. Sorry, give me a second. I'm going to reshare. There you go, share sound. Boom, okay. That was actually from the McDonald's movie. If you remember, there was about basically how McDonald's became a franchise from its origin. And I just thought this is really just fascinating, because it kind of illustrates in a way that ability of using the transformation, using data in terms of unlocking opportunities and capitalizing on them. So let me play it. It's very short. It's just like a minute or so. Hopefully you have...
McDonald's, may I take your order? Yeah, give me a hamburger and french fries and a Coca-Cola. That'd be 35 cents, please. Great. 15 cents is your change. Here you are. What's this? Your food. No. I just ordered. And now it's here. You sure? All right. Where are the silverware and the plates and everything? You just eat it straight out of the wrapper and then throw it all out. All right. Where do I eat it? In your car, at the park, wherever you like. Okay.
Speed. That's the name of the game. The first stop for every McDonald's hamburger is the grill. Meanwhile, as the patty cooks, our dressers get the buns ready. Every McDonald's burger has 2 pickles, pinch of onions, and a precise shot of ketchup and mustard.
Where'd you get those?
We made them.
Made them?
Yeah. Next is the finishing station, where we put the whole thing together. And voila, a fresh, delicious burger from grill to counter in 30 seconds.
Okay. Like I said, a bit of a tangent, But I actually thought it was a lovely representation of that underlying change on how to use, well, in a way, perhaps in that time, they didn't have the computers and all things with the sophistication, digitalization. But actually, if you think about it, it's using data in terms of how to make sure that that product got from concept all the way to the customer's hand in the fastest time possible. At every single point, what needs to be done to tweak it. In a sense, that is exactly what we're talking about, whether individually within an organization or across multiple organizations. But as you saw the person's reaction of, wait, what? Disbelief, non-familiarity, in a visceral form. That was exactly what I was representing when I said about that learning curve and moving from a comfort zone to discomfort. You could see that he was initially a bit unsure of, but I'm expecting something in a certain way, and well, we're having a change. And actually, it's providing a new opportunity. Now, again, it may not be relevant for all, but I thought it's actually in this particular case. Secondly, this whole dimension of whether it's data, transformation, exploration of opportunities, it's not a one-off. It's not that you do an initiative and you're done with it. It's every single day. This is why, and I'm sure you've heard the term, it's a data journey. That's not a figurative, emotive, giving kind of a representation of an experience. No, it is literally a road, but unfortunately just keeps on going. Because remember what I said at the very beginning. Data and transformation, digitalization, again, whichever term you want to use in it, in the end of the day, is about knowledge. That is what it is. It fundamentally, and at the heart of it, is about knowledge. And guess what? It never changes. When you're dealing with your own internal customers, there's a change in behavior, there's new opportunities, there are rooms of efficient improvement, or just an understanding of how things operate. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with external clients, whether they're on a retail basis or on a corporate point of view, same thing. We have now genuine opportunities and an abilities to capitalize on that. And I will give some examples from, like I said, machine to person. That is what it is about at the end of the day. But the trick, and a lack of a better word to it, is, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, is creating balance. It's not about waltzing into an organization saying, oh, I'm going to deploy quantum computing and take you to the next dimension. It's about how do we assure that at first, at the heart of it, we're addressing, if it exists, problems or opportunities for improvement, and addressing immediate necessities, however simple they may be. So there's also a necessity in the organization to, even though, let's say, I'll be very candid with you, we want to use AI, but if your problem or the challenge or the room for opportunity is a process change, or it's an automation, or it's just a dashboard, well, that's what you need to do. It's taking that as a stepping stone one day another. And secondly, and this is just maybe I'll say cheekily, you always need to have a mixture of cowboys and accountants. Because as I mentioned, it's creating, and I'll just go very quickly badly, this balance point of backwards and forwards. There needs to be the conversation, there needs to be discourse. If there's one thing I always tell my counterparts and colleagues in organization, in the group, as well as organization that we support now outside the group, is I apologize in advance by saying my job is to ask a most irritating question. Why? When you show me, oh, David, this is how we do things, I'm almost guaranteed to ask you, why? Why do you do it this way? Why is this particular approach chosen? Why things happen this manner? And the rationale behind it is to really unpack it to understand so that we can address not just symptoms, but underlying root cause when there is an opportunity. So what is data and AI really about? What it really represents? As I was referring from the very beginning, it's about knowledge. When I enter meeting rooms or conversations, which has happened quite a number of times, and I get, well, David, how do we use data in an organization? How do we use AI? I mean, obviously, the geek in me gets super excited and enthusiastic that there is a desire and a need and a want to use data and AI. But the pragmatic and the individual who wants to make things real kind of takes a step back and saying, unless you're a research company, and it could be market research all the way to genuine research, That isn't the question. The question is, what do you do? Or what is it that you want to do? And let's peel the onion, as I like to call it, going backwards in terms of identifying, is data, is AI, is automation, is process, is whatnot, the right tools and the means in order to unlock that? Very important. So again, if I go back to the piece de resistance and the first element of techglomerate, where you're dealing with multiple organizations with the degrees of the beautiful complexities, it cannot start with just data. It has to start with, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve? What is that underlying core that's driving us? And I pretty much am willing to bet all of you is that data will be at the heart of it. But if you start with data, many times it's difficult to connect and it's seen as a cost. When you start with the business objective, with the aspiration, it's actually seen as investment. Again, potato, but a very, 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 very important one. Now, the reason why I keep on emphasizing this is because, ladies and gentlemen, the technology is here. You will be absolutely astounded with some of the things that are out there, which perhaps don't have the same level of attention and marketing as, let's say, Gen AI, which on its own was, remarkably phenomenal, getting 100 million users over a record amount of time. So the way I like to position it, and again, whether the technology is relevant to the organization, the ease of integration, yeah, all that is good stuff, and which is critically important. I am not trying to undermine it. But the point I'm trying to say is that you don't start from tech. Just like you don't start from data unless you're a research company, you don't start from tech unless you're a technology company. You start from the underlying business, and that's when you work backwards. And if you realize that there are architectural challenges of integration, you realize whatnot, well, again, then at least it's an existential conversation of how do we approach this? How do we do this? How do we make sure we're doing the right thing that allows us to achieve the underlying aspirations? This is the sure remedy to assure you don't end up with white elephants or blue elephants or pink elephants, whatever the saying goes. Data and AI, digital transformation is all about the business. It's all about the underlying objective. And having a few of those cowboys who are saying, well, what is more that we can do? And taking ownership on that, understanding and knowing that the technology is available. So whether conglomerate, companies, company, department, individual, I know this sounds like a catchphrase, but it truly starts with the mindset. And maybe if I extend it a little bit more, it starts with the mindset and it starts with the KPIs. How do you incentivize perhaps the right mindset? And I'm slightly on the, I guess, I don't know whether it be the right or the left spectrum of things, willing to take risk in order to identify and explore opportunities, because that's the nature of innovation. At the heart of it is 1 out of 5 will work, 3 out of 10 will work kind of scenario. And those 3 will pay for the 5 or pay for the 10. But there needs to be a willingness of saying, this is something that's worthwhile. What can we do? What are the possibilities? And quite frankly, just do it. Because no matter where you start within that kind of cycle, one of the biggest challenges that organizations face is that, paralysis analysis, or hypothesize to death, or needs to get consensus. I can tell you right now, if you're trying to get a consensus to drive transformation, you will never get it done. For a very simple reason is because if everyone agrees, by definition, it's not transformation. It is an obvious hindsight that just simply needs to be implemented. Transformation and that opportunity, there has to be someone that goes, ooh, I'm not quite sure about that. Is this really going to work? That's actually a good thing. So bit of a different perspective on how to drive. And that's why it's important to drive. A reference that I always like to make out of Singapore with DBS Bank, which has been very public in its transformation over the last decade or more even now, is from the group CEO, which basically said at the start of the journey, if I kind of surmise it, is I just gave all my 1,000s a KPI to do one project on data. And then the question was like, but what it was, I said, I don't care. You have to give me by the end of the year 1 project. Succeed or fail, your KPI is to deliver 1 project. And that's fantastic. That was phenomenal because it literally kickstart the engine And yeah, some of them were not so exciting. Some of them, I won't say were so glorious. But guess what? There were those ones which were like, we would have never thought of it before until we've actually started doing it. So it is the mindset with the organization. And by the way, all the way from the top, you will generally find that I don't know how to put this, but I'll just say it out loud, that perhaps the younger generation would actually be quite willing to take the experimentation, to have a bit more of that risk appetite. And perhaps as we, including myself, get the experience over the years, perhaps the risk appetite slightly diminishes. So it is important to pepper and create the balance. So governance on the younger generations, and of course, having a bit more willingness and ability and the safety net that it's okay to take risk on the more experienced one. This is just an example and things, and like I said, I'm going to go to the use cases in the time that I have, but just a quick sense of just baseline capabilities that are possible to explore within an organization and unlock. But again, I want to skip that one and get to some of the use cases to kind of towards the end of the slide. So as I mentioned, it's about the mindset. The tone is from the top. I can't emphasize enough. If you simply leave it to the organization to quote unquote do the right thing, or it makes sense, or it should, again, it's not that it doesn't happen. You will always have the rare gems who will just take the ownership and do it. But fundamentally, as a general principle, the tone has to be from the top. The ownership has to be from the top. I still remember a project that did in the past, actually for a large bank. And because of the new capabilities, they were able to achieve, I mean, astronomical savings. And I think it was like in the hundreds of millions of pesos. And the people on the ground were terrified to roll it out. They were genuinely terrified because in their mindset, they didn't see it as like, oh, we're saving all this money. They saw it as like, huh, we've been doing a bad job, and that's why we weren't able to make those savings before. And there was a need from literally the top. I remember the day it was a COO that came in and literally said, amnesty. You did a phenomenal job with the tools, capabilities, processes that you've had. We have now new capabilities that are bringing us to the next level. So it's not that you've done a bad job. We now have an ability to go to the next S-curve. But that message had to be from the top. Okay, some examples, very briefly. Like I said, I'm going to double click. And of course, you obviously have just the opportunities from a conglomerate in terms of just business collaborations, sellings, and all that. But all the way from just thinking differently. And in the case of the bank, I love this one. It's like, oh, where do I put an ATM? Well, you know what? Everywhere. We just move it and load it up with the technology that allows for facilitation. This is a project driven by ADI and a partner of ours out of Thailand, Repco. This is for Boydus Power, where effectively we're creating the first digital power plants, digital plan with predictive asset maintenance, preemptive warning sounds, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And again, you could think of like, oh, but this is how we run power plants. Nothing wrong with that. But we have new capabilities, new skill sets, new knowledge, new tools that could take this good and make it phenomenal, bring it to that next S-curve level. And it's having that willingness and approach. I think the cement one, I have an example later, but even in cement, see, you're not dealing with people, you're dealing with machines, you're dealing with processes, but actually driving efficiency, property management, et cetera, et cetera. I can keep on going. There are countless examples from literally a vending machine of where we place the Coke, all the way to a fundamental transformation in business operation to creating new potential business line. So the cement one, if I kind of double click on it, I won't bore you with the details of cement. I knew nothing about cement other than it's a very hard thing once it becomes concrete, but it's actually a very fascinating process, kind of illustrated on the right-hand side. But I will tell you one fun fact that if you didn't know, it's the second most used substance on the planet after water. So it's pretty necessary. So very, very, very quickly, if you look at that step at Klein there, where essentially the compounds of what it will eventually make cement get basically stuck in a furnace. It's like baking. It's like baking bread. We used AI by taking measurements from all the machines in the process and having an understanding of what are the underlying compounds so that we're minimizing wastage. If I simplify it as such, think of it as just minimizing wastage. There was a 50% reduction on wastage effectively in terms of unused product, different samples combinations that be done, because these are it's quite an exact science, and it has to result with a certain compressive strength. I mean, no one wants to build a house whereby it's the wrong compressive strength and God forbid something goes down. So long and short, very, very important. Use all the data that's already available and resulted in a 50% operational efficiency, saved money, a lot of money. But then came that insight, came the knowledge. But in hindsight, when we started, hand on heart, no clue. 35 kilotons of CO2 emission reduction and the ability to quantifiably measure it. If you would have asked me, David, are you going to be able to reduce CO2 and and can you measure it? I'll be like, no, I'm focusing on operational efficiency and saving my stakeholders money. But this was an outcome of having that information and having that knowledge. So fantastic, and this can be applied on any process. This one, actually also in context of last week with the typhoon, very relevant, very applicable. And in our particular case, actually across multiple of the businesses, whether it's land, infra capital, avoidance power, as well as the stuff that we're doing from an NGO point of view, is climate risk. So the problem that we're faced, very candidly, is our equipment gets damaged when you have these kind of, as you're seeing in the image, landslides that are occurring due to rainfall, etc. and whatnot, let alone, obviously, unfortunate impact to lives that can happen. So we've actually built capability using topological data that we have, using geospatial information, and even using satellite data to what you're seeing at the bottom. And I'm sorry, again, this is not as sexy or whatnot, but it's very practical, very pragmatic and practical of essentially identifying in advance the risk of landslides across a particular area that we either have assets or we're actually planning to build assets. Now, why this becomes extremely important is because if we're planning to build assets and we see that, on a particular line that we're going to build, whether it's a pipe or whether it's an overhead cables, there's going to be a high risk. Guess what? We don't kind of build there. And it gives us the ability of saying, well, actually a different path, which may seem to be more expensive, net is actually better because it has a lower risk. Obviously, this, as you can see, has multiple implications across the businesses, let alone partners that we work with in providing this underlying information. So another example of the conglomerate in action, using data and what it means in transformation. Okay, so this was the project that I was talking about. So since I mentioned it, I won't dive in detail. And then finally, which I think is pretty much, yeah, I'm good on time. Slide is the world of finance. Obviously, we have financial institutions, and not just financial institutions within ourselves, but also the engagement of others. It's the NGO businesses that we have, and then internally within business, we have collections. We do with supply financing. You have payment terms, everything. How do you know? How do you know? How do you know to give a particular vendor 30-day payments term versus 90-day payments term versus 60 days payment term? How do you know to give a person or an SME a loan or not loan? Particularly we're dealing with organizations, individuals that may be thin file or no file. And that's kind of what I'm trying to depict here by this visual, is that these are all riverside properties. I think it's very evident from the pictures of the differences, but how do you essentially now provide the same underlying service? Because at the end of the day, well, one may be data rich and one may not be data rich. Actually, that's not correct. All have data, they just have different facets of it. So whether we went away and actually built what we call alternative, well, I won't quite use the term credit, but proxy credit scores, whether using from usage information, and that's a beautiful example of, let's say, power and bank. Not every bank customer has a, sorry, say the other way. Not every power customer that draws power has a bank account or has a formal credit type of facility. But believe it or not, they all have power. It's amazing. It's like it'd be a hut in a corner anywhere, and they will have a power meter, and they're paying for it. They're utilizing it. There you go. You suddenly have an ability to use that kind of information to create an estimation of, if you're able to pay for power, just because you don't have a bank account, just because you have a credit card, doesn't mean that you don't have a history. So you're seeing these underlying approaches of how we can use data, be it individually or across organization, to maximize new possibilities and opportunities. Okay, like I said, I'll skip a few. So this is about fraud, obviously very important. Again, using data, identifying those possibilities in this particular scams and mules. If anyone's interested, I'm very happy to talk about that. In fact, I just recently wrote an op-ed about it. And then finally, just to provide that aspect, because especially when you're dealing with boards, of governance, risk mitigation, fairness, if I use that term. There used to be a question that I used to get asked when I was in MAS and the regulator, like, oh, David, is it, innovation, or do we have to stop innovation and make sure we're doing the right thing? And I'm like, I don't understand. Why do you see it as an or? It's an and. Innovate, drive it, push, go with safety, with governance, with risk mitigation. These are not contrary. This is actually a fundamental example of, again, by using data and getting knowledge, is not only we found that by using AI with controls, we were able to mitigate discrimination. One of the concerns that people had with respect to AI is that it not only did not decrease profitability, it increased profitability. Again, things that we didn't know in advance. The only way we could find out is by experimenting, exploring, attempting it, and learning. And if the outcome is, no, this doesn't work the way we think, fantastic. We have that knowledge. So again, I'm an optimist. I'm a glass half full type of individual, that even things that quote unquote did not succeed, I see that as a success because we now have that knowledge. Again, obviously within context. So that's effectively what I wanted to share with you in terms of how we've been thinking about data, how we think about transformation. And when we hear that core of a conglomerate, what does it mean? But again, it doesn't have to be like, oh, it just operates on conglomerates across multiple businesses. It's also within organization across different departments, or within a department and the aspiration and the objective that you're trying to achieve. So in our particular case, we are capitalizing on that, are driving the group to becoming that conglomerate. And specifically from an NDI sense is we are ambitiously being public about it to drive that opportunities for the Philippines. And in fact, something that I have said and I will continue saying is this is resulting in IP, it's resulting in know-how, it's resulting in capabilities, and we are in that pursuit of bringing that to the rest of Southeast Asia and the world, in fact, as part of one of ADI's own goals. So with that, I'm conscious of time, so I'll stop there. I had some stuff about Gen AI, but I'll skip it because I don't know, well, maybe one quick minute. It's maybe I'll just say one word there. The vast majority of focus about Gen AI, all this about individual productivity, which is fantastic. And this is whatever a vendor out there and provider. One of the things that we've been very focused on for ourselves, as well as some of the other parties that we've been working with, is what we call enterprise productivity. Now, I know this may sound like potato. It's like, oh, but David, a person works in an enterprise. Okay, the difference is individual is, here's a tool, fantastic, go be better. The reality is you only find that 10 to maybe 20% of the people actually will do something. Enterprise productivity is still the same capabilities and tools, but you embed it in an underlying process. You embed it in an underlying procedure. So from audit is very exact. Rather than saying, here is auditor, go use ChatGPT and be better, is no. This is the audit process and how it gets embedded for, let's say, automatically providing responses on the audit standards or accounting standards. Here is the evidence that was used in terms of corroboration. Please, human expert, can you validate that? It's really making sure that at the end of the day, this is not just a nice fun fair, but we're really maximizing and capitalizing on those opportunities. So where to start? Doesn't matter. Just start. Make mistakes. Learn from it. I can't emphasize when people say to me, oh, David, someone's not so happy about that. I was like, it's okay. I take it on. I'm learning from it. But are you happy with all the rest of the stuff? It's like, yes. So the reality is people speak more when they're unhappy, don't speak that much when they're happy. So what I'm trying to get with is don't let the risk of failure hamper the potentiality and the ambitions and the value that can be attested. Imagine if you had that mindset for ChatGPT and never got released. Imagine if you had that mindset for McDonald's, the thing that there's so many of them, or Jollibee, or iPhone. this is how we need to make sure we're constantly driving our organizations and possibilities forwards. And 3 minutes to Mark. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, David. That was very informative. Now to moderate the discussion, may I call on the managing partner of Gorriceta Africa Cotton and Saavedra, Attorney Mark S. Gorriceta.
Hi, David. How are
Hey,
you?
Mark.
How are you, my friend? Yeah, what a great presentation, David, as always. So, yeah, thank you for being here and for accepting our invitation, as always.
No, my pleasure.
David,
next time in person.
yeah, it should be right. David, of course, just for the benefit of everyone, I've been working with David for so long, right? David from Union Bank, to UBX, to Union Digital, and now, of course, Aboitiz Data Innovation. So yeah, David, again, thank you. Let's proceed with the discussion. I think we have like 30 or 40 minutes, but allow me to proceed. I was listening intently to your presentation, a lot of things to note there. But David, with respect to traditional conglos or conglomerates with their diversified portfolios, or they're facing increasing pressure. Well, that's what I think, to adapt and compete in this tech-driven world, so to speak. So, David, how do you envision tech conglomerates like yours, or aside from the Aboitiz group, how do you envision tech conglomerates evolving compared to your traditional conglomerate counterparts? Again, especially for those who came in late, what do you think are the unique advantages will they possess in terms of their structure, operations, and approach to this technology, right? Of course, I heard you said, you say about knowledge, even the last part. Of course, technology or AI can even reduce a gender bias that could increase profitability. But yeah, if you could expound further, David.
No, I'll be happy to. And so to do that, I think it's important to look at two things. And I'll double click on the kind of a bit more specificities. But before it, I think there's two things to kind of look at, which is quite important. One is there needs to be a bit of self-reflection of the nature of the conglomerate. Why? Is because not all conglomerates are the same. And that means, just like I say that even on the surface, when two companies look the same, say, oh, no, just give me what they have. It might not work, because it has to be contextualized. And that's a very, very important dimension. Again, if I go back to the consistent message that I hope everyone, if they take away anything, it's that is, in order to make it something that is effective and pragmatic, there needs to be a contextualization. There needs to be a relevance to the organization. So number one is the nature of the conglomerate. And the nature of the conglomerate, especially when you look at the Philippines, or if I go broader Southeast Asia, it's from a very centralized conglomerate to a very federated conglomerate.
Right.
That is very important, because then the underlying approach and methodology of achieving the quote-unquote conglomerate approach will be different. Arguably, the centralized one is going to actually have it easier. But again, arguably, it's not that you can't, it's just that you have to take different aspects. And then secondly, and I'll make reference to the conglomerates actually that I think they've kind of shifted from being a conglomerate more to being a family, a company in Europe. So if you look at the conglomerates in Europe, which are now obviously some of them in the multi-century year, they're effectively a portfolio company. They're a holding company where they do not have involvement in the operating business. I invest, it's a portfolio, you run, you have to give me returns, kumbaya. So I want to emphasize that, because that also is important. If you remember what I was sharing for all is, what is your objective? What is your goal? Why do you want to do it? Don't just do it because it sounds cool. And I say this because sometimes I do things because they sound cool, but don't do things just because it sounds cool. What is your underlying objective? If you're saying, well, hey, David, I'm a centralized conglomerate, and I am seeing there are opportunities that are basically there's money being left on the table. And I don't know about you, but I don't like leaving money on the table. And let me give you a very simplistic example. You have a retail business and you have a lending business. Are these two businesses talking to one another? Are you actually maximizing that like very obvious opportunity and lending to your retail customers? Are you identifying? Because if they're buying out from you, you not only can maximize that by doing the marketing, that is the lowest hanging fruit. That's tick number one. Tick number two is, Mark, I know what you're buying. So I could now tailorize the exact type of loan to you when you need it. Imagine that possibility, because we're now in a world of hyper personalization. You know, what's it called? The I. What I want when I want it. Everyone is king and queen. So, and the reality, and we're seeing this over time. I mean, this happened even in the UK in 2000 when customer loyalty for banks just disappeared. And people suddenly went, I'm going to move my money from your bank to that bank. And they were just like, well, what do you mean you're going to move your money? It's like, sorry, it's my money. I like their offer. I'm going to move across. You've seen it happening on the retail space. We have seen it in transportation. You're going to see it. If I make a premonition, already you'll see it happening in Philippines in finance as well, when suddenly the ease of moving things, or even at the lack of the ease, are going to happen because people are saying, I want you to tailorize to me. So the competitive edge is, how do I know you better without asking you too many questions, without becoming the creep factor? So you see where I'm coming from. That's number one. To then the less obvious opportunities, which quite frankly, like I give you like the case of what I mentioned earlier, which is an actual case, by the way, of using power, obviously with consent, with governance, power information of customers to be able to provide them financial loans and financial services. That wasn't, however much I like to claim for brilliantness, it wasn't. It was literally looking and doing work for the power company for completely independent purposes, and then going, wait, hold on a second. They don't have bank accounts. Why? Remember the question I said that it's the most annoying that I always ask? Why is that the case? I own a company that is able to meet that gap. Or in fact, maybe if you're a conglomerate and you're part of expansion, hey, I am now seeing the piece of the puzzle. I am missing this. Do I create it or just buy it? So that's on the centralized. To the decentralized one is when you have effectively autonomy, it goes back again to the question of incentivization. How do I incentivize it to play nice and to identify those opportunities where it may not necessarily or immediately give me that return? So again, slight differences, but that's how the mindset and the approach should be viewed effectively and taken in my humble opinion.
Right. So perfect seg to my next question, David. So like, I guess for like traditional businesses, including ourselves, right? Who would want to transition into not a conglomerate for me, but let's say into, digital, right? Of course, lawyering is one of the oldest professions or professions here. So, but we have been working with your team, very specific. It's not like you just said it. It's not like one size fits all, right? We have been working a lot of questions, right? And of course, as you said, which you had that already from me, with having that mindset of transitioning, right? So you got that already. So, and I said with your team, with you and with Alvin, etc., I want to transition. But of course, for our listeners here, aside from what you just said, what other specific strategies or approaches can be done to ensure, and I know that's a loaded question, to ensure a successful, quite difficult.
No, that's a very, very good question. So again, starting point is, what is the objective? And I like to oversimplify things. I kind of sometimes get into trouble because of it, but I do like. At the end of the day, it's either you're trying to make more money or you're trying to save costs. Even customer success, to me, it's actually, you can link it back to making more money or reducing costs. Reducing costs is because dealing with complaints costs you money. A happy customer can result in reoccurring business. So let's just simplify the world to make more money, save money. Now, usually they'll also be in the back because of growth objectives or restructurization or new market. You see, there's a goal and objective. Then it's going backwards and actually doing a review of, okay, what do we know and what do we potentially need? That's number two. Number three is, and I'm going to quote a very smart woman in my life, my mother, don't boil the ocean to make a cup of tea. Why? Is because it's technology, and sorry, let me just zoom in again. I don't know why my camera keeps on going out of zoom. technology is never ending. Like literally, by the time we're done talking, I guarantee there's a new piece of tech out there that's gonna, wow.
Right.
Actually, we've kind of gone through the same thing. There's a continuous evolution. But what is important is basically, as part of a roadmap, as part of an overview, which is important, is to keep it small and go, okay, out of the things I want to do, this is an area that I can have a quick win, no matter how simplistic it is. And this allows me a certain degree of flexibility of technology, be it from a licensing perspective or a plug and play or some degree of modularity. Why? Is because the last thing you want is to do these, large bespoke initiatives that can be anything from 8 months to 18 months. But by the time you're done, the business kind of turns around to saying, oh, yeah, no, we've already changed strategy. We're doing something else altogether. So there needs to be that nimbleness. So long-winded way of saying, know what you're after, understand what the gap is, because that will give you, in a very simplistic view, of complexity versus payback.
Correct.
Take something that has a low complexity and a relatively, or should I say, sufficient payback that will get attention. Because obviously, if the payback is too small, no one's going to care. If it's too big of a payback, so if it's a very high payback, but the complexity is equally very high, it's going to take you those 8 to 18 months. Choose something in the middle, and then take an approach of proving the value. Prove the value, prove that it can be done within the organization. Because then, worst case scenario, even if it doesn't work, even if the outcome is, oh, actually, there's something else that we can do, or actually, that problem that we were trying to achieve, like improving, like let's say hypothetically speaking, improving customer success for a type of product. Maybe the outcome is, actually, we need to discontinue that product. The product doesn't make sense. Forget about the happiness of the customers. I can focus on improving the customer happiness. Actually, it's the product that doesn't make sense. We need to change the product. That is how I would take it. Very systemically, very pragmatically.
Right. Yeah, David, perfect. So like to that point, of course, like integrating AI and big data, as you said, know your objective, the payback, proving the value of the worth of such a program or project. But most often are not, like struggle with integrating AI and big data into our or everyone's operations, or it may pose as a challenge, like data silos, lack of internal expertise, right? We don't have like tech experts like what you have there probably. And aside from resistance to change, let's put that aside. Resistance to change. That's just that everyone is open to change already. But how can like you had a slide with respect to baseline AI capabilities, so which like you double clicked further. But of course, aside from having that right mindset, perhaps you can expound further on the possible basic, but the baseline AI capabilities that one should have in their organization.
So you said another thing which is actually very important in terms of data silos, readiness. If anything, is using AI successfully, and again, I'm using AI in a broad sense, provides justification to get the plumbing right. But you don't start with the plumbing. It's like you don't like go and you just build a whole network of plumbing and then build a house. No, you have an architecture, you have a view. Now, why I'm starting with that particular point is because if you don't have that environment, that goes back to the point of complexity. It doesn't matter that's not connected. Like when we did the thing of cement, we didn't have a beautiful architecture, but we had an ability of simply connecting to that machine to pull out the data, to test something out. So it's kind of disconnected from the rest, but we can validate individually on that particular outcome. Now, that may now justify, hey, actually, we need to have a better system and a more integrated. So in other words, it's okay in having you don't have to go from 0 to 90. It's okay to go from 0 to 20% or 0 to 40%. You see, my point is we need to take those incremental steps. So that's number one. Number two is, back to your point of like basic AI, is reporting. It's not a dirty word. And just because you're generating now a report and it's not quote unquote AI, doesn't mean you're not progressing and you're not innovating. I guarantee you that, again, I'll use the term basic capability of, do you have the ability of getting the information that you have and you do on a regular basis, like number of clients that you deal continuously, the amount of time you spend of them, the costs, whatever is relevant to you, because I'm trying to put myself in the world of law, but are you getting that continuously, or do you need to do that on an ad hoc basis? Do you need to literally go through files to compile it? That's a clear example of an immediate benefit, because the time, literally the time you save, time is the most valuable asset that we have. And if there's one thing we're absolutely bad at, is estimating the cost of a lost opportunity. What I mean by that is, let's say there's something that's going, I'm just going to, just for the folks on the call, let's say there's something that's going to cost us 100,000. I'm just throwing a number in the air. And we're just, talking and talking and talking and reviewing. And so a month goes, 2 months goes, 5 months goes, 7 months goes, 10 months goes, and you may or may not end up doing it. At any single point in time, did we sit up and saying, how much is it going to cost us starting in a month from now, in 5 months from now, in 7 months from now? Because you think like, oh, no, it's still 100,000 and I can get a discount. It's like, no, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that you're waiting, the fact that you're delaying costs you money, because as the longer it takes for you to get that benefit, the longer it takes to get that efficiency, the longer it takes for you to maximize on the value that you're trying to achieve and unlock. So there is an actual cost for inaction. There's a cost for delayed action. And we're very, very bad in doing that. And that's something that we also need to do as part of those estimations of should we do it or not effectively.
Right. David, to that point, like, what can you say for the likes of me, or probably a lot of our listeners here, viewers, of, let's say, we want to dive into this, right? But there's also a fear of once you, because you just said, we know that, innovation technology is ever changing. So let's say once you know this, right? Once we invest, then there's always a fear, like for me, that once we're ready to roll it out, it's already outdated, right? Yeah. So like, so now you double think, right? Yeah. Now you double think. So like, I invested so much, but it's already outdated. So was that a bad decision or wrong decision, right? So you end up not deciding because you end up starting, I don't know, starting again without even starting, right? Because you would think, of course, like this, it requires investment, not only of money, of course, time, right, to implement everything.
Absolutely.
I mean, on the real world. But yeah, I'll stop there first. Your thoughts on that?
No. And by the way, that is a very valid, because we've seen enough cases. I mean, and this is kind of funny. Obviously, there was no other alternative. But I think many organizations that are, and I'm not saying anything bad. I have a lot of friends in SAP, but many organizations invested in ERPs of SAP are now like, how do we get out of it?
That's my point.
So I guess there are two good things. If I kind of, one is we know better. And I can tell you right now that any provider, let me start maybe that way. Any provider and anyone who provides closed systems run in the opposite direction. And what do I mean by closed system is very simple. Yes. Can I get my data?
Yes.
Yes, no. How much does it cost me to get? Like, these are the kind of questions. Can I modularly add to it? If it's as a service, obviously then is when new things are being released, what is your frequency of updates? Actually, to be honest, if let's say you're not a bank or you don't need to have your own CapEx investment, I love the world of SaaS. It's Mr. Vendor, it's your responsibility to keep on running ahead and providing that aspects. But like I said, the core question that I would always ask, is it a closed system? What is the degree of modularity? And do I own my data? If the answer to any of these is no, then, and if let's say there's a group, let's say 5 vendors all say no, I would argue that, you need to think really, really hard whether it's worth your time. Because there is going to be a downstream cost. Now, obviously, sometimes we're forced to, in the financial sector, to some extent in power and others, you're kind of forced to from a regulatory point of view. Obviously, that's not the case in other industries. So they kind of just say, look, we have no choice. We just have to put it in place and we'll deal with it downstream. But obviously, in other organizations, you may be like, well, do we want to wait? Like now, anyone that asked me, if, let's say a year ago, do we need to build our own LLM, large learning model? Maybe. Now, No way. No, I mean, you would need to justify it vehemently to me for making the investment to actually build your own LLMs. You don't need to. There's out there, they're good enough. It's really about how do you fine tune and how do you make it a more specific agent for your organization. So that's sometimes the benefit of waiting for the readiness of maturity. But what I was trying to get to, and that was kind of the slide, is that while there's always a progress, there's always the frontier, excuse me, and the cutting edge on the traditional things, from reporting, from data management, from consumption, from as someone pointed to me, traditional AI. I felt very old when they said that. The tech it's like buying a car. You can choose your manufacturer.
Correct.
You can choose your style. You can choose whether you want to go with a Bentley or with a Toyota. So that one, to me, it's really less a question of the technology. It's a question of do you know what you're trying to achieve? And then it's the question of how much are you willing to risk? Are you willing to risk 100,000? That maybe the outcome of it is, okay, we paid 100,000 and we got a certificate. We now know.
Got it. Yeah, thanks, David. So, with that, of course, like as we transition, right? Everyone is transitioning now. So, for the past 2 years, I must say there's an increasing demand of data scientists, right? And AI specialists, so to speak. So for those that, and it's so very highly competitive. So, David, what specific skills and domain expertise are crucial for companies to basically build successful teams in this area? Beyond talent acquisition, what strategies can companies employ to, if really needed, to attract top talent and retain the workforce with respect to, transitioning digital transformation, like really harnessing AI and big data?
So I'm a big believer and fan of a multi-pronged type of strategy. So you're right, you do need the technical expertise. And for now, at least, look, they will come at a premium. Let's just be candid about it, because of the attention, the interest, like everyone's hiring.
Right.
On top of that, it's also a realization that and as I've been alluding to, it's not just about technology. There are two other, I would say, traits that I would argue are more important. So obviously you'll have the technologists, the people who can do the back-end stuff, but you will need to have people as part of the team that I would argue technology is the least important dimension. It's their will and their EQ. Because remember, it's about understanding the business. So like you come to me and say to me, David, this is the problem I'm trying to solve.
Right.
Obviously you're the expert, but I can't take that face value. I have to have a conversation. I need to understand your thought process. I need to understand, why is it that you think that is the problem? Because maybe because of your expertise, you've already done multiple steps and you're like, oh, that's my problem. But when I overlay my technological data thinking, I'm like, actually, Mark, what you're experiencing as a problem is the symptom. Your problem is upstream. And if we solve that, and it's having that conversation on the tech domain side, is if we solve that, I actually think it's going to result in addressing your problem and more, and it's identifying that. Because I've seen many, many cases whereby people went and you're like, oh, David, solve this problem. Yes, sir. So, and you're like, you haven't solved it. It's like, but we've done what you've told me. You told me to jump once. I jumped once. And actually, David, even though you told me jump once, actually it's not about jumping. It's about having a room to be able to jump in. It's having that conversation to actually realizing, actually what Mark wants is a room. Doesn't care about the jumping. It's just the jumping is what seems obvious. I know, sorry, stupid example, but that. So it's really about people with the will and the EQ. EQ is because of what I've said, and the will is because, and I tell this to people that work for me, data is a tough job. It is, and I'm not saying this because I'm expecting any cries of sympathy, but it's probably the least appreciated job as well. Because you are literally in the plumbing. You're trying to create an attention of, it's like trying to get, let's say, you drive cars, people here drive cars. It's trying to get you appreciate the importance of the road and why we need to invest in it and do that. let's be candid, you only pay attention to it is when you hit bumps and then you complain, right? If the road is smooth, if there's no issue, do you even think about the road? No.
Continue driving. Right.
Exactly. So you need people to have that willpower, that the fact that you're driving happily, that's it. You've made my day. The fact that you're driving happily, I don't need to come and say, David, good job on the road. I'm happy. And then the final one is the rest of the organization. You don't need to train people to be data scientists. You don't need to train them to be that. But it's extremely important that there is a training, there's a capacity or competency, development in the rest of the organization to understand, well, what do you do with this? If I literally come and I give you a Gen AI, if I give you a predictive model, if I'm able to, let's say I give you, you do law, I am giving you a tool that's able to give you the likelihood and probability of a case to win or lose in court.
Wow.
Okay. Exactly. So what do you mean, David? How do I use it? Was it telling me? Was it relevant? You see, so these are the things that become really important to create that contextualization, because as I was mentioning in the beginning, this is a synergy. It's not me building you Rome and you enjoying Rome. It's us working together in order to create that newfound fortune.
Right. Wow. Yeah, you're right. So David, so for my last question to close, for everyone here, of course, it's a mix of a lot of financial experts here, CFOs, CEOs as well. So to close, David, what or how do you think big data and AI, in a nutshell, continue to shape the success of conglomerates or even traditional companies in the coming years? So like,
So,
how would it shape?
Sure. And again, let me start simply. So for the CFOs, for the financial folks and all that, it's a very simple question. Do you get your financial statements and your financial information exactly when you need it? Or do you get it a day, a week, a month, 6 months after? Literally, I don't know the response, but the world of big data is that you can have the ability of knowing your exact financial status when you want it, when you need it. Now, that is something that I've spoken to enough CFOs who tell me, David, I would love to have it, not a month delayed. And why is it so difficult? That's exactly where the creating of the road becomes really important. It can't be done. And again, assuming that's a relevancy, that's an important. So whether you're a CFO or you're a business leader, whether you're a person in the front line, it's about how do you get the information that you need when you need it. And not delaying business, not delaying processes because you have to wait on it. Oh, it's because it takes 7 days to get this. We need to, no. How would we want it? If we had a magical wand, how would things should run given the ability to do it? That's the way we need to start thinking. That's the way we need to be approached. Then, whether we use reporting, whether it's plumbing, whether it's piping, whether it's AI, this is where we get people like myself who get super excited. But that's, to me, is the message, is challenge your environment, challenge yourself. Are you getting what you want when you need it, or you're getting it just because that's what's possible?
Perfect. Thank you, David. David, that was fun. Thanks again for being here and always accepting our invitation. But by the way, somebody messaged me before we stop, Jay, before we end, probably I'll open the floor to one question from any of our audience. Jane, I don't know if that's correct. I always do this face to face. Yeah. So like, anyone who has a question for Dr. David? If none, so wala. Joey, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you, David and Attorney Mark. It was a very interesting discussion. To award our token of appreciation to our guest today, may I call on Vice President Joey?
Yes, thank you, Jane. Thank you for the most interesting presentation, David. I like it. I especially like the just do it mindset. As FINEX token of appreciation, we hope you'll accept this plate, which we have for you.
It's beautiful, thank you.
We hope we're able to give to you on your next visit to the country.
Thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
David, by the way, that's real art plate. It's not an NFT.
No.
Just
When he
want to
said
make
plate,
sure.
I was like, yep, it's a... No, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me. And if there are questions from the audience, I'm happy to take it offline, online. So thanks
Thank you
again.
as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we end, we would like to request a quick photo with all the program participants, if that's okay.